The night they carried her couch onto the sidewalk, it started to rain. Not the soft kind of rain that makes everything poetic, but the cold, stinging kind that soaks through cardboard and pride alike. I remember standing behind my half-closed blinds, watching two men in gray uniforms stack her life in uneven piles beneath a flickering street lamp. A mattress leaned against a rusted mailbox. A lamp with no shade. A plastic bin spilling children's drawings onto wet concrete. And in the middle of it all stood my neighbor, arms wrapped around herself, trying to look smaller than the humiliation swallowing her whole. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the idea that one small decision can change everything, then please take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this matter. They remind us who we can be. Her name was Elena. She had moved into the apartment across the hall from mine 8 months earlier, carrying more plants than furniture and apologizing every time her 5-year-old son, Mateo, laughed too loudly. She had a tired kind of beauty, the kind that comes from fighting silent battles for too long. I knew she worked nights at a diner 2 bus rides away. I knew she always paid her rent late, but paid it. And I knew that the landlord had changed ownership recently to a man who preferred numbers over people. I didn't know she was 3 months behind. The eviction notice must have come quietly, folded like a secret. When the men left and the rain came harder, Elena sank onto the edge of her mattress, her shoulders shaking. Mateo clung to her waist, confused but not crying. Children are braver than we think. They don't always understand the danger, but they feel the fear. I don't know what made me open my door. Maybe it was the sound of rain hitting that mattress. Maybe it was the way she kept brushing water off the drawings as if she could still save them. Or maybe it was the memory of my own mother standing in a similar rain 20 years ago, holding my hand while strangers decided where we would sleep. I walked down the stairs and crossed the street without an umbrella. The rain soaked through my shirt in seconds, but it felt right to stand in the same storm she was standing in. I told her to move in with me. She looked up, eyes red, lips trembling from cold and disbelief. For a moment, she almost laughed. Then she shook her head and said that wasn't funny. There was a sharpness in her voice, not anger at me, but at hope itself. Hope had betrayed her before. Hope had promised things and then disappeared when bills came due. I told her I wasn't joking. The truth is, I hadn't thought it through. I lived in a small 1-bedroom apartment. My life was quiet, predictable, almost painfully controlled. I worked remotely as a graphic designer. I ate dinner at the same time every night. I kept my couch exactly where it was because routine made me feel safe. Inviting chaos inside my door was the opposite of safe. But watching her there, I realized safety is a luxury that means nothing if you keep it only for yourself. She refused at first. Pride can be heavier than furniture. She said she would figure something out, call a friend, find a motel. I knew that tone. It was the tone of someone who had already called everyone and found no answers. I didn't argue with words. I grabbed one end of her mattress and carried it back toward the building. When I held the door open and waited, she finally followed. That first night was awkward in ways that only sudden kindness can be. I gave them my bedroom and slept on the couch. Mateo explored my living room like it was a museum, touching everything gently, as if afraid it would vanish. Elena kept apologizing for the inconvenience, for the noise, for existing. I told her she didn't owe me gratitude for breathing under a roof. But when the lights were off and the apartment fell quiet, I stared at the ceiling and felt the weight of what I had done. Rent wasn't cheap. Groceries weren't cheap. I had savings, but not endless ones. I had built my life carefully after years of instability. Was I strong enough to open it up again? The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee. Elena was already dressed for work, her hair tied back, exhaustion lining her face. She had cleaned my kitchen before I even stepped out of the living room. Mateo was coloring at my small dining table, using the dry pages I had salvaged from the rain. It felt strange. It felt alive. The first challenge came quickly. The landlord knocked on my door 2 days later. He had seen Elena enter and leave. He reminded me that my lease specified 1 occupant. His tone was polite but cold, the way rules often are when they hide indifference. I told him she was staying temporarily. He said temporary had a limit. After he left, fear crept in. I could lose my apartment. I could lose the one thing I had worked so hard to secure. For a brief, ugly moment, I wondered if I had made a mistake. But then Mateo ran into the living room holding a drawing he had made of our apartment building. In the window of my unit, he had drawn 3 stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. I didn't tell him about the landlord. Instead, I started looking for solutions. I helped Elena update her resume. I stayed up late redesigning it, making her diner experience look like management training, highlighting her strengths instead of her gaps. We searched for better-paying jobs together. She applied to everything from receptionist positions to warehouse shifts. Rejection emails came like clockwork. There were nights when she cried quietly in the bathroom, trying not to let Mateo hear. There were mornings when I saw the doubt in her eyes, the fear that she was failing her son. I wanted to fix everything, but life doesn't bend that easily. All I could do was stay steady. Money tightened. My grocery bill doubled. I picked up extra freelance projects, working until 2 in the morning. My back ached. My eyes burned. But every time I considered complaining, I remembered that she had once lived in constant anxiety about losing her home. I could handle temporary discomfort. One evening, I came home to find Mateo asleep on the couch and Elena sitting at the table with a letter in her hands. She looked at me as if she didn't know whether to smile or break down. She had been offered an interview at a local community center for an administrative assistant position. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable, health insurance, regular hours, the kind of job that builds foundations. We prepared for that interview like it was a final exam. I helped her practice answers. We talked about confidence, about eye contact, about owning her story instead of hiding it. I told her that surviving hardship wasn't shameful, it was strength. The day of the interview, she wore the only blazer she owned. It was slightly too big, but she stood taller in it. Mateo and I waited at a nearby park, counting the minutes. When she walked toward us afterward, her expression was unreadable. For a terrifying second, I thought she hadn't gotten it. Then she smiled. She didn't have the job yet, but she had made it to the final round. And for the first time since the rain-soaked night, hope didn't look like an enemy. It looked like possibility. Meanwhile, the landlord returned. This time, he was less polite. He reminded me of the lease again and hinted at consequences. I felt anger rise in my chest. I asked him what he would have done if his sister were standing in the rain with a child. He didn't answer. Rules are easier than empathy. I asked for a month. He hesitated, then agreed, but warned me that was the end of his patience. Pressure mounted. Every day felt like a ticking clock. Elena sensed it too. She offered to leave, to find a shelter. I refused. I had invited her in. I would not let fear push her back out. The final interview came and went. We waited 3 agonizing days. On the 4th, her phone rang while she was washing dishes. She froze, hands dripping, eyes wide. I nodded for her to answer. When she hung up, she didn't speak. She just started crying. This time, they were not tears of humiliation or exhaustion. She had the job. It didn't solve everything overnight. Her first paycheck would take weeks. We still had rent due. But something shifted in the air of that apartment. It felt less like survival and more like rebuilding. I helped her budget. We calculated how long until she could afford a small studio. She insisted she would move out as soon as she could. I nodded, pretending the idea didn't sting. In truth, I had grown used to the sound of Mateo's laughter, to the feeling that my apartment was more than a shelter for one. Weeks passed. Elena thrived at the community center. Her supervisors praised her organization, her warmth with visitors. Mateo started kindergarten and came home with stories about new friends. The apartment felt brighter. Then one evening, Elena sat across from me at the table and told me she had found a small, affordable place 5 blocks away. Her eyes searched mine, perhaps expecting disappointment. I felt it, but I also felt pride. The day she moved out, there was no rain. The sky was clear, almost defiantly blue. We carried her boxes down the stairs together. This time, nothing was being thrown away. Nothing was abandoned. Before she left, she handed me a small frame. Inside was Mateo's drawing from that first week, the 3 stick figures in the window. Only now, he had added something. Beneath the sun, he had written one word in uneven letters. Home. Elena told me she had thought I was cruel when I first said she could move in. She thought I was mocking her pain. But when I carried that mattress back through the rain, she realized I meant it, and that changed something inside her. It reminded her that not everyone closes their doors. If this story has touched your heart, if it reminded you of the power of one decision, please like the video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement helps these stories reach people who might be standing in their own rain right now. And before we end, I have a special request. Comment the word home below if you believe that home is not just a place, but the people who open their doors when the world shuts you out. Months later, I sometimes see Elena walking past my building with Mateo's hand in hers. They look lighter, stronger. And every time I unlock my apartment door, I remember that safety doesn't shrink when you share it. It grows. I used to think stability meant protecting what little I had. Now I know it means trusting that kindness multiplies. That night in the rain, I thought I was saving her. But in quiet, unexpected ways, she saved me too from a life too small, too guarded, too alone. And all it took was opening a door.